Welcome, listener. You have found Women, Land, and Food. I'm Karen Brightly, and this is season 1 of a new podcast, sharing conversations I've had with women who have close connections to the land that sources every bite of food we eat every day of our lives. My hope for Women, Land, and Food is that these women's experiences hit your heart like bursts of energy the way they did mine. That's what happened to me as I dug into this idealized place called Vermont and started following my dream of owning and stewarding land and met our season 1 guests. Digging together into these women's stories, their hard work, their unique perspectives, and their rooted lives, we reconnect these two realities, food and land, and it turns out that really matters. And it's too good not to share. We hope it mirrors some stirring quest in your lives, too, and offers energy and inspiration to make some bite-sized change. Like, did you know that we, you, me, and all our sisters, control 93% of all the food dollars spent in this country? Turns out we have another superpower to save the world 3 times a day through stuff we already do: shopping, cooking, and eating. And then we hope that the podcast delivers some shared moments of peace and vibrancy, connecting with women whose grounded lives help us get more from this survival exercise we call eating. Their perspectives refresh our awareness that we're here to be fully nourished and to figure out what that means, and to help us put down our own deep roots and to grow our own deeply satisfying lives. Because now, maybe more than ever before, what we choose really matters for our bodies and souls, our families and communities, and for our shared home on this planet. Welcome to Women, Land, and Food. Listener, I'm so excited to introduce today's guest, Rachel Field. Rachel is a subsistence farmer and an Episcopal priest. You can see her official bio on the Women, Land, and Food website. I tend to think of Rachel as an Episcopagan, as her spiritual practices are very much rooted in land as God's first gift, God's most enduring teacher, and the essence and source of all the food that keeps us alive. Rachel did her graduate work at Yale, where she studied both divinity and forestry. I'm so glad to share this remarkable woman and her work, and to use the old-fashioned word, her priestcraft, with you today. Welcome, Rachel.
Thanks, Karen. I'm really glad to be here.
I'm so happy to have you. We're going to jump right in. How did you come to your land? What's your story?
Oh, boy. We made a community map of places that we were really supported by. One of them was in Vermont. One of the places was the Eastern Shore of Maryland. My family's there, and I'd lived there for a while. And we had a few blips on the map in like Massachusetts. But what really pushed us to look for land in Vermont was the community map and climate change. I mean, the reality that, one, to buy land on the Eastern Shore of Maryland was not going to be possible, but 2, would probably be underwater in 30 years. So it didn't really make sense for us to try to do farming there. So we ended up dragging our poor and wonderful realtor through every piece of undeveloped land, undeveloped in air quotes. And then I just found this place on Zillow, and it had everything we said we weren't looking for. It had a house with electricity and running water, and it had 13 acres. And as I looked at it more, I just fell in love with it. It was built in 1790. It had the right soils. So we dragged our very relieved realtor to this house. I bought it on my own, and I bought it from a woman, Martha, who had owned it for 40 years. And she took us out to lunch after the closing. So it was this incredible moment from beginning to end where I felt like we were looking for a community. We put out a vision. Martha read our vision. She responded. Everything just fell into place, and it just felt right, even though we didn't see the soil until 4 months after we'd bought the property. It was a big gamble, but even when the snows melted, it turned out that was right too.
Describe what you do on your land.
I love that question. And the first image that came to my mind was just like, we have this kind of sunroom on the 2nd floor. I think you've been there, Karen, that little prayer nook. And I just like spread out like a cat and like sleep in the sunbeams. So like there's a lot of rest that happens. The sort of standard run through answer to this question would be, we have a small dairy herd, which consists of one cow, Mocha, who is phenomenal, and she knows it. She's a 100% Jersey. She's got that A2 genetics. She's from our mentor at Earthwise Farm and Forest, Lisa McCrory. We have a couple of goats. They are mostly just the Joy Committee. We have about anywhere between 18 and 30 chickens, depending on what the hawks are doing nearby and how many eggs we've hatched. We raise pigs from time to time and harvest them. We harvest everything ourselves, everything from birth to death to slaughter to processing. We do it all ourselves. It's really important to us. And we have a 1/4 acre of vegetables. So that's all like the farming stuff. But then the other half that's just as important is the spiritual formation and connection. So we've started hosting small groups for retreat and individual spiritual direction. And we also are the home of a emerging community called Spirit Dinners, which is a place for folks who are spiritual but not religious to come and gather in the woods and just talk about whatever it is that they want to talk about, questions about spirituality, the practices that they have that aren't necessarily from a church.
Talk about the economics of being on your land.
The first thing that comes to my mind is sort of the irony of even owning land. That was probably the biggest struggle, thinking about what does it mean to own property? Can anyone actually own property? And then what does it mean to own property as a white-bodied person in the United States when we're moving into unceded Abenaki territory? I think for me, that's where the questions about economy start. And then we could get into all the sort of fun details about the cost of raising food and the cost of harvesting it versus like how much you can charge for it. And so we wouldn't be able to do this without grant support, without donations, without jobs off farm. But it also feels really important that both the food that we grow and the lifestyle that we have is something that is held in community and accessible. So everything we offer is on a sliding scale, starting at 0. So if you need a dozen eggs, come take a dozen eggs. Fine. If you want to pay $6 a dozen to give us a little bit of extra money, we are super happy with that too. And more often than not, it works out that people want to be generous.
I love the community aspect of that. You have a little store at the front of your house. Mm-hmm. Is that right? And do people stop in?
It depends on the season. In like February, when there's like 4 feet of snow and you really need snow tires to get on and off our road, like not so much. But we have a pretty regular milk rotation where people just switch out their bottles. So they take the full bottles home from our mini fridge and then leave the empty bottles. And then we just have a day per week that we just swap them out. We're technically open Tuesday to Sunday. And everybody shows up on Monday. And it's not just people picking stuff up. It's like people who just want to come in and chat. So we're sort of like the sign's kind of always open for people who want to chat. And then maybe they'll buy eggs, maybe chicken, maybe not.
Yeah.
But it's sort of a revolving door. Yeah.
Lovely. In a rural setting to have a gathering spot. Mm-hmm. It just doesn't. Yeah. There isn't a 7-Eleven on every corner.
Yeah, totally.
I would love to have you talk about food, especially knowing how you eat and love to eat.
Yeah.
Talk about food.
Yeah. I'm just going to throw a shout out to my dad for that great metabolism because I eat so much food. I love food. I have a specific dance for potatoes. If I could grow one thing in the world, it would be potatoes. Like potatoes are the best. I got so excited, just hit the microphone. I got 7 varieties of potato in my garden right now. Always looking to grow more. I mean, let me just pause for a moment and tell you, there's like scarlet fingerling potatoes. There's fingerling potatoes called Magic Mollies that are dark purple on the inside and the outside. I got 3 different varieties of red potatoes that are like white on the inside, red on the outside. I could talk about potatoes
for a while.
For a long time.
Maybe another episode. That would be really fun.
Potato episode. Anyway, so I obviously love to eat and I love growing the food, but what really brings it to a deep place for me is growing the animals. This fall, we've been on our farm for 5 years. This is our 5th growing season. And this fall will be the first year that we harvest a calf that was born on our farm. So Chino, who is Mocha Chino, we're going to harvest him in December. And like I was the first hands that ever touched him in this world. And I think about like Robin Wall Kimmerer talking about reciprocity and what is it like to look at the land knowing that I love the land, but then to look at the land seeing that it loves me back, that's a whole different level of relationship. And that's where it becomes really real for me, is to know that I am asking of these creatures to offer their life to me, to my friends, to my family, and that they trust me to walk with them through that process, and that I can give them the best, most full, most wonderful life that they could want all the way from birth to death. I mean, that's when I think about food. And then to know that my body will go to feed them. Because in Vermont, you can get buried anywhere. So I've already got my spot picked out. I'm not looking forward to it anytime soon, but I've got my spot picked out because I know that it'll be my job to feed them.
Your give back.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, I need you to say a little bit about the work that you're doing in the Episcopal Church now.
Okay. So at the moment, well, probably the easiest to explain, I am the quarter-time priest associate at St. Mary's in Northfield. So I do Sunday morning sermons. They often mention creation.
I did hear that you were there really for the baked goods afterward.
They do a phenomenal coffee hour. Cannot recommend coffee hour enough. It's like really nice. So I will say it's a huge perk.
It's a part of your salary.
It is a part of it. Yeah. And at our Michaelmas celebration, which is an annual procession, I mean, I'm sure everybody knows what this is, but just in case, I'll mention it. It's an annual procession on horseback through the graveyard with loaves of bread after harvesting carrots, which comes from our ancestors in Scotland. Anyway, I'm doing 2 other projects with the Episcopal Church right now. One of them is called Spirit Dinners for folks who want to be in a community to explore these questions together. And the last thing I'm working on is a project for the Diocese of Massachusetts and the Diocese of Western Massachusetts to flesh out something called an Episcopal Path to Creation Justice. And that's a framework to help parishes walk more deeply into relationship with the more than human world. I think it was started to be more of like an evaluation process so that at the end you could get, you're a certified level 1 parish. They made the mistake of bringing me into the project. So
I don't really care so much about levels.
Yeah. So now it's sort of shifting, and it's incorporated a rather large focus on building relationship. And so now we're training companions. So each parish has a companion to walk with them to really share in that work of discernment, to lift up and celebrate what's been done for creation care, and to push toward a vision that is co-created for where the parish wants to go next. It's intended to be for every Episcopal community. So the hope is that every single worshiping community, whether it's a parish with 500 people and a staff of 7 priests who are already in an LEED certified building, et cetera, or it's a community of 12 people with no priest and they're wondering if they're going to keep the doors open, and everything in between, are being invited into this process because of the understanding that every decision we make is an environmental decision. So everybody is participating in environmental work, whether they know it or not. It's just, are we contributing to the problem or are we contributing to a solution? So
that resonates as incredibly valuable from the quantity of land owned by individual Episcopal churches, but aggregated, that's considerable property, to where investments might be held and placed, and the implications of those that a lot of times are not really looked at through the lens of impact. I know a lot of colleges and universities have been taken to task for where they place investments, but for the Episcopal Church to look at that, there's some significant holdings. That would be pretty phenomenal.
Yep. The Episcopal Church still has not divested from fossil fuels. It could. It has a commitment to do so. Still has not followed through. Would love to see that happen.
Since we recorded this episode, I did hear that the Episcopal Church at the institutional level only recently and finally divested from fossil fuels. As complicated as that is, we are on the path. As will become clear in later episodes, I really love our bank. Mascoma Bank was one of the first great discoveries we made when we moved to Vermont. Mascoma is a community bank supporting local businesses, nonprofit organizations, and customers around Vermont and New Hampshire. From everyday checking and savings products to mortgages and commercial lending, Mascoma Bank helps community members navigate all their financial challenges. They are also serious about personal engagement. You walk into a branch and they know your name. It's the type of customer service that we know and expect in northern New England, and they deliver. I'm proud and grateful that Mascoma Bank is supporting the inaugural season of Women, Land, and Food. Member FDIC, Equal Housing Lender. I need to tell you about one of our sponsors, not just because I said I would, but because Rocket, the founder, has built this app that hits me where I live. Food in Vermont. The app is called Eat Vermont, and it does what I would do if I had time, but better. So not just finding restaurants powered by my location, and menus, of course, but short videos of places I love, behind-the-scenes footage I've learned so much from, or, and this one's amazing, themed tours based on food or a season, so I can plan outings for myself or visiting guests. When you become a member of Eat Vermont, you'll get benefits around the state from secret menus to exclusive discounts. Even better, if you work in food and agriculture in Vermont, all of this is available to you for free. We especially love the vision of Eat Vermont, the reason Rocket created it in the first place, because we share his value of food to create and grow the connections that help us know our neighbors, meet across cultures, and deepen relationships. If you love food and want to support local agriculture in our Vermont community, get Eat Vermont from your app store. I have a list of questions I want us to go over, and we could go in a number of directions from here. When my producers and I sat down and talked about the nature of this episode, it was really the container I was looking for talking about land and race and anti-racism, which I know is a significant dedication of your time and energy, even your choice to be here. So I think I'm going to try and frame this question. Well, we've had several conversations about the church we both love and her ancient teachings about how to follow Jesus as our way of understanding God, of being human and the life cycle, both in the seasonal harvesting, in the animal harvesting, and in the harvest of our lives, our life endeavors. As church nerds, we've geeked out on so many aspects of this conversation, but one idea that we've talked about a number of times has really moved to the center of my understanding of our faith. And that is that I would really love to be able to change our main icon. And instead of the cross, which is a very complex, dark, in modern days, means to an end. And we could talk about the nuances and mechanics of that for 100,000 years, which people have already done. But it seems to me, and even in our liturgy, it's a progression to the table. And I think if we had a table as the culmination or the point of all of this, it leads me to a comment I've heard you say that I would love for you to take off on and talk about, that all life is given to be given away. Care to riff on that for a little bit?
Oh, boy. Yeah. When did I say that? That was pretty good. Oh, man. All life is given to be given away. Yeah. It's funny you frame that with the cross and the table, because I think of them both as being symbols of that offering. The table, obviously, as a table of sacrifice. Because I'm a church nerd and also love sci-fi and fantasy, I think about the Chronicles of Narnia and the table that Aslan is killed on. I mean, it's such an obvious Christian image, but that the way that food and that our bodies rely on the giving away of another in order to exist, it's complicated and it's messy. And there's so many more layers that I feel like I'm getting trapped up on in my head. But, you know, this idea that we give of ourselves to each other, and if others won't give to us, we can't survive. So it already starts us out in this position of total dependency, but also extreme power that subverts a lot of the the sort of toxic charity base, like, oh, I have a lot and I'm going to give it to you. And now I'm thinking about some of the conversations we've had about racism too, where it sets up one group of people as having and another group of people as needing, or one group of people as being competent and another group of people as being not quite good enough. The table is the place where we all come together because we need something and we have something to give. Similarly, the cross for me does that with God. And it's probably my favorite images of the cross are from the medieval period where they drew Jesus as a woman with breasts. I love that because it's this cosmic giving away, and it brings in that food, that nourishment, that when something is given, something else is invited, and we're invited to give back in response.
So would you talk a little bit about how long you were a vegetarian?
Oh.
Because if we take this logic all the way, you're given life in eating a potato or a mushroom.
Yeah.
Different levels of consciousness or...
Yeah. I was a vegetarian for maybe 5 years in high school, back when I was also a self-proclaimed druid, still attending church every week, singing in church choir, not taking communion, but self-proclaimed druid. And yeah, vegetarian basically for that reason. I've heard vegetarians put in a couple categories, one of them being a moral category. And that would certainly have been for me. Not so much carbon emissions, but the not wanting to take life. And I think it's been a core wrestling. I'm not sure if I'll be able to get this out in the way I want to, but I'll try. It's been a core wrestling for me to come to terms with the fact that my presence and my existence can and does do harm to another in ways that I can't entirely stop or correct for. And for me, that comes into play with vegetarianism, that comes into play with racism. You know, as a white-bodied person, my presence, the way I've been taught to think and act, the way I've inherited my culture or lack of culture, depending on what framework we're using, does harm in the world. And that's something for me to be broken open by and to sit with, and then to try to learn how to correct and fix. But with the food, you know, I eventually realized my body needed to have more protein than I was able to get. And so in a funny and kind of similar way, like in order to survive and thrive, made the conscious choice to start eating meat again. And so the first meat that I ate, you can always cut this if this is too much, but the first meat that I ate after 5 years was raw deer heart, which was...
And how did that come about?
Yeah, that was a professor of mine in undergrad who did Paleolithic foodways. We're still friends, and he did this meal for anyone who wanted to try food that he had harvested, and he would teach about it. And he taught a lot of traditional ecological knowledge and indigenous foodways as well. And so part of this was this deer heart tartare, which was disgusting. It was really bad. Like, don't eat that. It was so gross. But I was like, all right, if I'm in, I'm in. Yep. So we went for it.
And that was the moment.
And there it was, yeah. And then I was like, oh, maybe in 10 years I'll have like a sustainable regenerative farm and I'll be able to like do this myself.
I was so delighted to find someone so far ahead of me in this deep thinking, to the point where I'd love for you to talk a little bit about this, just in your MDiv program at Yale, opting to study forestry as well.
Yeah. Yeah. What drew me to the program at Yale was that you could get a joint degree from the divinity school and the forestry school. I'd had a background in environmental studies. I'd been working in ecology for 2 years. I was a seasonal bird bander, and that I sort of always...
Okay, explain what that is, because that's one of those phrases that I run into, and I'm like, wow, a lot of people must know what that means.
Seasonal bird bander.
It's a seasonal bird bander.
So I would get hired by a place to run mist nets, which are silk nets that are about 10 feet high and maybe 20 feet long. We had about 100 of them, which is massive. This was one of the biggest stations on the East Coast. And the birds fly through, can't see them, ping, hit the net, drop into the pocket, and then get stuck. And then we would walk around, collect all the birds, and put small metal bands on them and take measurements like weight, species. We would look to see any number of things. And then we would record it all. And then we submit it all. My favorite part about that was the kids groups that would come, and we could just hand them a songbird. Like, how cool is that? You're 10 years old and someone hands you a hummingbird. Not only someone hands you a hummingbird, but there's this crazy person holding a hummingbird telling you that if you stuff the hummingbird safely and gently in your ear, not with the pointy end, you can hear its heartbeat. And it's so fast and so beautiful. And how could something like that be alive? And so like that's the kind of excitement that got me in to the forestry school and the divinity school. Just like how the more than human world can inspire wonder. Yale's forestry school program is phenomenal, and I'm not going to be doing major timber operation management. That's just not going to be my thing. So I just focused on the div degree, but I still took like fire ecology, which was really fun, and a couple other classes so I could basically use my forestry school classes to explore a lot of the themes that I was finding in theology. And then I could use the divinity school classes to explore the ecological things that I was learning. So I really tried to put all my classes in conversation with each other.
Could you give us an example of one of those conversations?
Well, here's a fun one. There's a language requirement for the divinity school, and I was able to sub out silviculture for my language class. Silviculture is the study of the management of trees. So I argued that I was learning a language of how trees speak and work and communicate, and that should count. And yes, they said, go for it. So
what was your exam like?
Oh, I still did all the normal stuff in the silviculture class, but it was my own inside joke. I don't know how I got away with a lot of this, to be honest. I'm not sure they know, so don't play this for the Yale folks.
I don't think they'll be listening, at least not the first episode. You use a phrase, the more than human world, or more than human beings.
Yeah, that one is shamelessly borrowed from David Abram. His book, The Spell of the Sensuous, is a book that I read when I was working on my undergraduate thesis on intrinsic value ethics. I did my thesis on intrinsic value ethics and spotted owls, which is, if you've ever been to Oregon, I mean, that's a really crunchy one. But I remember coming across that phrase, the more than human community, because nature implies a separation between humans and anything else. We are nature. You know, non-human community is defining everything else by the fact that it's not a person. I love more than human because it really expands even the way that I think about who I'm in relationship with and the beings that are around me.
One of the things we've alluded to, and you've mentioned a couple of times, is that you run retreats on your farm, Heartberry Hollow. And in those retreats, and I've been to some of the spiritual practices, especially in the dead of winter, and I have to describe for a moment, the bonfire is taller than two people. The candles are buried deep into 12 inches of snow. So they're just lighting the snow. If anyone lives near snow, I highly recommend trying this. It's just stunningly beautiful and compelling. And it's an amazing thing to be outside in a 19-degree starlit night where you can be comfortably for a couple of hours. And the experience I enjoyed, we sat for a little while, we walked, we had these candlelit paths, we had giant trees to absorb things that we needed to lay down. We had this roaring fire to absorb things we needed to burn up and release and let go, all the while staying perfectly bundled up and warm. And that was just one of many experiences that you've hosted. Talk a little bit more about your role in creating these opportunities for humans to engage more than human, and what it means to you to listen to land.
Yeah. I've been doing retreats for about 15 years now, and I talk a lot about holding the space. That has worked, and I have found that to really resonate with me for a while. Retreats at Heartberry Hollow, though, I really feel like the space is holding me, and my role is to simply invite other people to be there. And so the way that I do my facilitation and the way that I set things up, I want to have the lightest touch possible from me and my voice so that the more than human community can have the loudest voice and be the most available and be the one actually doing the facilitation. There's an exercise that I do a lot and that I usually use to invite people in, and I call it Natura Divina, which is the reading of God in nature. It's sort of an introduction between yourself and a being that catches your eye, and that could be a tree, a bird, a rock, a landscape view. All of those things could be what catches your eye. And then to actually begin to still your own internal voice enough so that you can invite the other being to introduce and speak its own truth from itself. And it sounds pretty woo, but the weird thing is it happens. And in the programs we've run over the summer, I've had people come back and they've had conversations with loved ones who have died. They've had experiences where something that they didn't know they were carrying surfaced because of the way the moss was being on the rock. What I find so remarkable is the way the more than human world can be not just a mirror, but a mirror plus, because it's
dynamic.
Yeah, it is. It is. And there is a sort of a strangeness and an awkwardness to saying, okay, I'm going to go out into the woods and I'm going to talk with this oak tree and it's going to tell me who it is and whatever. But just putting down that awkwardness and playing with it a little bit, there really are voices that are present and delightful and have an imagination that is so different from the imagination that I have as a human person.
Listener, we recorded Rachel on 2 days, one in the studio, one on her farm. So here and there, you'll hear some goats contributing, and sometimes when our sound engineers chime in. We love this larger community, and we hope this makes today's episode more vivid for you, too.
You want to see the chapel while we're over here?
Yeah.
So this is the spot where you were talking about our solstice gathering with the candles in the snow.
Yeah.
Just put them right down at the base of that ash tree.
And the ash tree is dying, isn't it?
Yeah. This one seems like it hasn't been affected by the ash borer yet, but we have ash borer in Vermont, and that's that insect that comes in and works its way behind the bark of the tree, and it's similar to the Dutch elm disease. It's just going to decimate the whole species. And it's particularly sad because the creation myth for the Abenaki involve ash. And so the ash are in the myth are sort of like a sister, like a close relative for the Abenaki. So, and they provide, the material for making baskets, and they provide firewood that you can burn green. So they're really like a really close partner for people in this area for 10,000 years. So to have them all dying is, pretty devastating on a couple levels.
Culturally, spiritually,
Yeah.
practically.
Yeah.
So I'm taking this anti-racism class, and we're at this part where they're talking about the devastation we Europeans have brought. Gosh, I hate putting my word we in front of this. Mm-hmm. What a practice. And there's a woman who is a Indigenous person and who's a linguist. And I'm going to play this because it's just so relative to everything we've been talking about. So it's
what
from
people
here.
felt for millennia, this is my land, and my land is me, and I am it, obviously, because we come from it, and we eat from it. And, things die, they go into the land, and we eat from what grows from there. So when we say land, ahki, it's just ahki, land. But if you say my land, you have to say natahkim. This means that I am physically the land, and the land is physically me. And after Europeans were here for about 70 years, you started to write natahki, which is so sad. because that means I am not necessarily part of the land anymore. My land can be separated from my person.
So I'm feeling the privilege of being able to talk to so many people and hear their experiences. But I'm talking to mostly white people and what their experience has been in our concepts of ownership. But to go all the way back into what actual partnership with land means, what the ash meant to the people who were here for thousands of years, and what it means
to them.
And still means to them.
Yeah.
The few that are left and have found each other to recongregate. But then we have the ash borer, and it just hurts. So I'm grateful that your cathedral is right here in front of this ash tree that's still living and still holding space.
Yeah. One of the first things that we did when we realized that we were being drawn to Vermont was to get every piece of information we could about the Abenaki written by the Abenaki. So Fred Wiseman's book, I always get the title wrong. I think it's The Voice of the Dawn, because the Abenaki, the Dawn people, is a comprehensive self-history of the Abenaki people spanning 10,000 years. I mean, it's phenomenal what he's pulled together. And then Chief Don Stevens of the Nulhegan Band of the Coosac Abenaki has a series of webinars online that he's done in the last couple of years. So we were able to find those.
Link to those in the show notes.
Yeah, and it was just as important to me as to looking at like the USDS soil information was to find out, okay, what is the relationship that is happening between land and people? How can I understand that? Is that something that feels like it fits for how I want to move through the land? Yes. Okay, great. Then that's just as important as like, are we going to have, cows or goats on the property? It's all part of the what does the land want? How do I fit in, and how do I understand who I'm in relationship with?
A couple of words spring to mind. Presence. Like the greatest gift we can offer in this age of a cell phone, and the infinite diversions available to us, that just to have a moment of true presence. I could see a rock being better than me at that a lot on a lot of days.
Yeah.
The other image that came to mind was just the reciprocity in inhaling and exhaling around a tree. I tend to think that there are a lot of things, and Shakespeare definitely referenced this, that are true in ways our empirical mind would love to understand that we don't understand yet, but we are either starting to, or we will one day, because truth is truth. And so things like having an exchange with a tree actually happens when we exhale. And I forget about that. And it does sound woohoo. And yet we have this incredible literal example of being in deep reciprocity. And then writ large, we're burning up the lungs of our planet as we speak. And even when I think about the planet ending, we say that as humans, but the planet's ultimately, give it 1 billion years or so, it'll be fine. We won't be here. We're destroying our place on the planet. We talk like we're destroying the planet. We're so human-centric in that thinking. But really, the earth as a living organism, we are intrinsically part of it if we continue to respect that we come from the land and we go back to the land and then take responsibility for what we do while we're here, but that the earth itself has always been standing ready to receive us, to hold us, and until very recently put up with the stuff we do while we're here.
Yeah. There's so much in what you said, Karen, that really resonates with me. And there's a book, The Smell of Rain on Dust. And in it, the author talks so much about the way it's about grief and grieving. So he talks a lot about the different ways that, animal companions take on our grief and walk with us. Our pets, I'm talking like Fido the dog, literally taking on our grief and metabolizing it. And the one chapter, he talks about a ritual of going to sit by the ocean for 3 days, because the ocean can quite literally pick up and carry the grief that we have and help us to let go of it. I mean, that's a level of reciprocity. And the planet will go on and all this. And anytime there's a disruption, so the loss of humans would be such a heartbreak for God at the same time. So it's this, life will always persevere, and there's all this pain of being in community and fracture and beauty at the same time, and just being in places where I can open myself up to that reality. I think the more the better. And so if there's anything Heartberry Hollow can do as a farm, my hope is that we are a place that we can open ourselves up. We talk about being rooted in land and growing in love. And that's my hope, that we can do that for the human community and the non-human community, the more than human community.
More than human.
Yeah.
Sometimes the pragmatic, the intellectual, the enlightenment version of understanding this can get really in the way of the heart opening. I remember when we were living in California, we were headed to the beach, and I just talked about it. I just feel like my soul is cleansed when I'm there. And a friend said, it's the negative isotopes. And she's not wrong. It really is the negative isotopes. And the beauty of that is it happens whether we're aware of it or not. In the awareness is this magnified gift where we can participate differently. We can share in community differently. We can participate as a group differently. And we can be aware of the connections that are sustaining us in ways that inspire, I think, hope. They're so compelling. I mean, you talk about animals taking on our sorrow. I remember when my uncle died, and he was a rancher, and he had a beautiful Australian shepherd that was his work dog and was with him 24/7. And when he passed, she went out to the gate to wait, and she waited the rest of her life.
Wow.
She'd come in for a meal, sleep inside, and go back the next day. And her job was to just be there for when he came back. And that was a beautiful life that she gave away in that loyalty. One of the nieces was having a particularly hard day, and I took her to see some baby goats. And they worked their magic. And when we left, she was recalibrated.
I was reading something online the other day about how, because we've, at this point, evolved with grazing animals for so long, that the sound of grazing animals actually calms us down because, and I was like, okay, cool. But because when animals are calm enough to graze, it means there aren't predators around. So it triggers something in us to say, we're okay.
Nervous system.
Which I was like, that makes hella sense.
Okay. So many directions I'd love to go. We can't leave this conversation without talking about horses a little bit.
Anything in particular?
I would love for you to talk about when you started saving for your farm, what you had envisioned on your farm, the role that horses played in your imagination.
Yeah, this asking me about horses is another one of the things, like asking me about potatoes. You didn't even ask me about potatoes. I just started talking about potatoes. But
because I wouldn't have thought to ask you about potatoes.
Yeah, that's fair. So to set the stage, I grew up riding horses. I did my little hunter-jumper thing, had the whole little outfit and all that. So I was like, no problem. Start a farm. I'll get a couple horses. I will be talented enough and they will be awesome enough that we will just do all of our pulling of logs. We will do any soil aerating. Like, we were going to figure this out. And in my free time with this lovely, relaxed, and beautiful, deep relationship, I'll just go riding through the hills with my new best friend. So fast forward to me buying my first horse. Tom was exactly the perfect horse for me and such a patient teacher. And the first day, this woman showed up with him in a trailer, walked this horse out of a trailer and was just like, here you go, and handed me the lead rope. And I'm like, oh shit. Like at the same time, like so excited. And then like, wait a minute.
I have a
Who's
horse.
in charge of this thing? Like, what is happening? And that sort of set the tone for the first year, where we had some incredible adventures together. And I learned so much about how I set boundaries, or maybe more appropriately, how I'm like kind of chronically incapable of setting healthy boundaries, how it's hard for me to say no and to have that actually mean something. And these are so many things that are helping me like in every part of my life. When we go through the ordination process, I heard so many times, get a therapist and get a spiritual director. I wish they had said, get a horse, because it has been
and you'll have a therapist and a spiritual director.
Exactly. Because it has been the most incredible learning of how to inhabit the space that I take up. And that is not something that I have been socialized as a woman to know how to do. I'm really good at giving up space and making other people feel comfortable. If I go into an interaction with a 1,200-pound animal and my only motivation is to make him feel comfortable, it's going to end up getting dangerous for both of us really quickly. And that's what ended up happening. They're perfect at being horses. And they were with me. And I'm working on all this crud about boundaries and how to be in a space. A lot of that is my own particularity, but a lot of it is because of how I've been socialized to be a woman. And so they were showing me that how I was showing up was not a safe place to be. And that learning has
not
been
safe for them.
Exactly. So,
which made it not safe for you.
Totally. And a horse not safe, they know how to fix that. Dump the dead weight and get the heck out of there. They're really good at it. So, it's just, it has been an absolutely transformational experience to have them. I have plowed and or pulled logs and or aerated soil exactly 0 times. I have wept on the side of a horse exactly 100 million times. I have fallen asleep bareback on top of one of the horses a handful of times. It has been the greatest joy. If I had known how deep of a reach of heart work it would be, I might not have had the courage to do it, but I am so glad I did.
So the regenerative farming piece.
Yeah.
Your eyes lit up.
Yeah, that's the fun part for me. I think it's a real challenge. This is one of those places in farming and living where I feel like there is a way forward that doesn't involve power over, but I don't know it yet. Even the tiny bit of learning I've done on traditional ecological knowledge, which is heavily from indigenous communities, and regenerative farming, let's just be very clear, is pretty much wholesale relying on indigenous knowledge, oftentimes not getting the credit for it, but amplifying systems that are already in place. Those, to me, tend to make the most sense in manipulating the earth so that the contours of the land catch water to slow it down and spread it. That's a permaculture design principle. And it just seems to work with what the earth is trying to do already, and to use the things that the earth does to further goals that we might have. But at the end of the day, the earth wouldn't have a swale on that contour if I didn't do it. And so that, to me, brings deeper questions. I think it's a live question for me. But what I love about the regenerative farming is, and I've watched this happen now because I'm 5 years in, when we do rotational grazing with our livestock, when we do some of the water management practices that slow water down, when we plant cover crops, we have actually seen our hillside go from mosses and strawberries, an indicator of poor nutritional quality in the soil. It's moved to clover and timothy grass that is almost waist high, and that's 5 years. So you can just see the root structure of the plants going deeper, the acidity of the soil is balancing out, and it's really exciting to watch biodiversity increase, carbon go into the ground just because we're following these practices. And it's really not that hard. And it's a lot easier than, quote, traditional farming, because we don't have to pay for the fossil fuels. We don't have to get the machinery. You couldn't get machinery onto our hillside if you wanted to. I mean, we're so steeply sloped, and so many of Vermont's hill farms are just tucked into these little nooks that you can work just fine with a horse or an ox. But a tractor, you better have a roll bar on that thing, because that's
going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, it's just not a good idea. So I feel pretty grateful that we're set up for this to work pretty well. There were some film crews in Vermont Public came by to ask farmers for stories after the flooding. And not many of the farmers at the farmers market could give stories about crop loss because they're in hill farms and because they're using these practices to mitigate water damage. So we're building resilience in ways that the 1,000-acre farms on the river bottoms just don't have. So that's also a pretty wonderful part of it. I remember walking the meadow with Lisa McCrory from Earthwise Farm, and she was picking up tiny blades of grass, but she was like peeking down around her glasses kind of deal, trying to identify the grasses. And she was telling me that the same species of grass can look entirely different if it's grown in poor soil or if it's grown in good soil. And the way it grows will change. And it can, if it's poor soil, it'll stay stunted. So we had a lot of these like tiny little stubby things. And she was like, I think this is good news because I think you have Timothy grass, but it's also bad news because your soil's really sad. And we were like, yay, aw.
So for people who aren't familiar with regenerative farming, what had been grown on your land before? What did you bring onto your land that helped the change? And specifically, what did the animals' involvement in the land have to do with it?
Yeah. So Martha Winthrop owned our property for 40 years or so, and it was lovingly nicknamed Hippie Hill, which I just absolutely love. And so I think it grew hippies for the last 40 years. Yeah, right on. And there's just great stories about family shenanigans that I absolutely love. So that's really what I think the land has grown.
Peace, love, and happiness.
Exactly. It also grew a very lovely beaver population. So we have this beaver wetland. And
how much of your 9 acres is the pond?
13 acres. Pond
13 acres.
is, at this point, probably 3 acres because the beavers left. So beavers come into an area, they dam up an area, the area changes drastically. They're a keystone species, which means they have a high impact. And then they, after a number of years, when they eat up everything that's there, they move upstream. When we moved in, the beavers had just finished clearing everything out. And I think Frodo, our dog, helped them to realize
it was time to relocate.
That it was time to go upstream. And so for the last 5 growing seasons, we've watched the level of the pond drop and the aspens grow. I mean, like these, not aspens, poplars, whatever. Poplars
of the
are
aspen
growing
family.
up. Yeah, same family. The poplars are growing up so quickly. I mean, we have these little trees that were like shoulder high are now like twice my height because they're such fast growing trees anyway. And so we've been able to watch that happen. This is a very long-winded answer. We brought on chickens because chickens are very easy. Chickens are a low-stress creature. They're not hard to take care of during the winter.
Okay, so you started with chickens.
So we started with chickens. And then we decided, because she became available and I'm a sucker, we brought Mocha home our second summer on the farm. I was working at another farm nearby, and I received an annual bonus in the form of 3 reject piglets that had been kicked off their mom. So Biscuit, Crumpet, and Muffin. There was a Great British Bake Off naming theme for that year at the farm. So we had these little pigs. We sent over the hillside first because the pigs will root through, break up. It's like it's similar to what we're going to do with tilling, but it's not as deep. But the pigs do this rooting to really aerate the soil, break it up. They stay in that top bit of soil if you move them through quickly enough, which we move them every 2 days because keep them going.
Using electrical fencing.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I had that fencing turned up so high because pigs are the scariest thing on a farm to me, because if they get out, they'll do whatever they want, and they can do whatever they want if they weigh 700 pounds and they're built like a tank with a shovel on their face, and they can eat a pound of flesh a minute.
Oh, don't fall down.
I do a lot of electric fencing. Yeah. Don't fall down. So the pigs go through, they root up the hillside. Then we moved the cows through, and we were like the only farmers in Vermont feeding hay in August because we just didn't have the grass to keep her going. So she was contributing her own
compost
offerings.
material.
Yeah, thank you. To the soil, but we still rotated her every couple days because we wanted to spread out the manure and we wanted to spread out the impact. Then I figured if we had a cow, we're going to be hauling water during the winter, might as well get a horse. So then enter Tom Bombadil, amazing, wonderful Tom. And so then the two of them did their thing. So it's really a cornerstone of regenerative ag that you move through an area quickly. The rest time is what really has the most growth. And I think it's the same for people. That Sabbath time at the end of your yoga practice, if you practice yoga, Savasana. That's when the real work of the practice happens. Like that rest is sacred and beautiful. And then, couple that with the interplay between the hooves and the manure and the soil biome. I mean, we can see it. We can see that you're seeding the pasture, you're feeding the seed, you're aerating the soil. It's what the soil wants.
Now, I've heard some farmers put the chickens on after that to spread it out. Is that something that you've done?
Our chickens are kind of just a force of nature. So yes, the farm where I worked in Northfield, Green Mountain Girls Farm, phenomenal farm. If you need vegetables, if you need meat, buy from Green Mountain Girls Farm. We would do exactly that. Their chickens were electric fence trained, and they would move their goats or sheep or pigs through, and then the chickens would follow right after. Our chickens just kind of do whatever they want, whenever they want. They really put the free and free range and make me question myself on a daily basis. If you've never looked into a chicken's eye, you don't know what it means to feel completely meaningless. It's like they make for the cow patties like a beeline, and then they spread the patty out. And I think we have a much, much lower fly and tick population because of it. This is where the pigs were last summer. This is currently a run for the cows. So the cows can come from the meadow through the woods, around the yurt, just around the back of the outhouse, all the way down over the walking trails and go up to the neighbor's meadow, 7 acres.
Nice.
So this, nothing, year to year, nothing is the same. So this is now a cow run. But the pigs in the woods, a couple reasons. One, that way we don't need the pasture turned over. And if they were on the meadow, they would just be turning it over. Even if we move them every 2 days, they're still having a big impact. But in the woods here, if you look around, you see this is mostly white pine trees and red maples. It's a pretty young forest stand. It's no more than 60 years old. And the white pines are really starting to top out in age. So what the pigs are doing in the forest are changing over this dying white pine stand to become a more open goal is like a silvopasture type with the red maples still in place, but we'd have more openness to have more grass underneath.
In between the trees.
Yeah.
So still shaded for good summer animal care.
Totally. And so the pigs are the first step. They have that role in the ecosystem of doing the initial disturbance, and then that resets the seed bed, and we can come behind and help it become meadow.
And obviously all the leaves are mulching down brilliantly. How do you go from this stage to a meadow?
Yeah, it's the pigs and opening. It's just, and then just time. It wants. There's nothing static in the land. There's no I feel like that's something we learn in, resource conservation, that you're trying to get to X, but there really is no static way the land wants to be. Everything's fluid, everything's in motion. So the land wants to change. I mean, it's what it does, and everything wants sunlight. So when you open up some of the trees, which we're harvesting for campfires and things, and then you have the pigs moving through, it's just encouraging the land to go in a direction that it already has energy to go in.
And it's really the function, once again, of light. How much you can be in the light.
Totally.
No metaphor there.
Right? Right.
What does it mean to be a woman on your farm? Does it matter that you're a woman doing what you do on your land?
I definitely think it matters. Matters in what sense? Matters in a sort of cosmic sense, because this is the body that I was created. I'm trying to be really thoughtful, because this is the way that I inhabit the world, and this is how I'm socialized to be. So it matters because particularity matters. So however I show up in a space, however anyone shows up in a space, that is bringing its own unique beauty, and it is of such importance just to be how we are. So in that sort of cosmic way of being sense, it matters. I think it's powerful within the social context, because farming is such at least the way it's thought about and talked about and represented in a lot of popular culture, such a male-dominated field, that it's powerful to see not only myself, but so many other women running their own farms. I think there's this push in sort of second wave feminism that says, like, women can do anything men can do. And, like, that's interesting to me. I think that's cool. And I could definitely see that being, like, part of the value of Rachel as a woman, as a farmer, being like, yes, second wave feminism, women can do whatever men can do. Hooray. But I think even on a deeper level, that there's a connection that has not been made as available to humans socialized as women, because our imagination was just that farming would be something that men would do. So I get to receive and to share in the ways I can this expansion of imagination. I just realized I'm basically summing up the Barbie movie. That I can have this kind of relationship with the land that might not have been available to women 20 years ago, 30 years ago. So it's less about being able to fulfill a role or offer something, but it's more about having access to this type of relationship. And I think that is important for me, and also for others to see and to want to do and to unlock whatever it is in them that gets unlocked by seeing that. And then that same happens to me when I see other women farming.
Interesting. I think you're beginning to dance with a paradigm that is an alternative to the power over. And I think when there are things on a farm that women physically can't do alone, and on any farm there are things men physically can't do alone, I'm just saying, that I think it is an opportunity to share power with.
Yeah.
And so if there might be more things that more women wouldn't necessarily be able to do alone, there are more opportunities to have power with, and to begin normalizing that share economy, and reciprocal and interdependent relationship with power that is growing another alternative.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's exciting to me.
It's exciting to me too. And I think it dips in because it's not about, I don't know, being a woman. Like, what is that? I don't know what that is. But I know how I've been conditioned to believe what it means. And I know how I've been conditioned to believe what it means to be a man. And so much of that being a man, they're set in opposition to each other. So being a man would be, taking charge, showing leadership, so much of that power over is the message I've received about what it means to be a man. So the opposite of that is I can't have power over, I have to give power up to be a woman message I've received. What I like about what you're saying, Karen, what that unlocks in me is that as we play with not just me being a woman physically, but what is the understanding of what it means to be a woman or a man, we can start to play and have these ways of relating and ways of being that aren't about power over. And I think that also pulls in the conversations we've had about racism and white supremacy, because I think they're connected. This unlearning patriarchy, this unlearning white supremacy, it's related. It's all of these systems where it's power over instead of shared power with. So that is really exciting to me too.
Yeah, I think it's an exciting age. And I think anytime there's the presence of the non-binary is this opportunity. So much of what's considered fluidity now, I think is sort of us, and maybe even just our white supremacy has exhausted itself. And we're saying it's not enough. There has to be more of a range. There has to be more movement and more. It just feels like somebody once said that we're in the death throes of these old systems, but the death throes can be really long and powerful. And I think we're seeing so much of this in the last gasps of the old infrastructures. But I think for the greatest number of people, it's just not working anymore. And so to be part of creating alternatives and to be creating alternatives so closely to food growing, which is something we participate in 3 times a day, even if you don't live on land or aren't connected to land, but to start understanding how all that food came from somewhere.
Yep.
It didn't emerge under plastic at the supermarket. And to begin getting connected back to where it came from and the people who are growing it and the wisdom, and even as social constructs are being revisioned and reenacted differently on the land. We're being fed in multiple ways from these changes.
We were standing on the precipice of the most holy thing that anyone will ever experience, and that is the transition from life to death. And we did it with each other. And Timmy was, Carl said at one point, what a good teacher. And he was. That's what came up for me in that moment, was like, oh my God, take it back. Like, I
changed my mind.
Yeah,
it's like labor, childbirth.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah, but there's no going back. The fact that he just waited in the same spot. And Timmy, we have been able to do slaughter so efficiently and cleanly and low stress because Timmy taught us. There's a short story that I love about a pigeon and a hawk. And in the short story, the author talks about how at the moment when the pigeon realizes that he's been caught, he sort of turns and offers himself to the hawk. And that comes up for me thinking about what happened with Timmy. I mean, he walked us through the process.
That's what all the old ancient teachers talk about surrender, right?
Yeah.
Like participating with.
Yeah.
Such a hard concept for us, especially white-bodied people who are used to dominance, to even remotely consider.
Yeah.
There was a crow in this story, wasn't there?
With Timmy?
When you were going ahead and processing him, the way I heard it, your eyes were full of tears and you were having trouble even getting your good knife work going, but you threw some entrails out on the compost pile.
Oh, I don't remember this at all.
I'll tell you what
Tell
you
me
told
the story.
me.
Tell me the story. I don't remember.
I'll repeat what I heard.
Yeah.
The way I remember it, whether it actually happened this way or not, was that you had gotten to the entrails and you threw them out on the compost pile, and that you were just, your eyes were streaming tears, hard to see level tears. And this crow came down and took some of the intestines or whatever away. And there was a sense of rage, and you're just like, no, this is Timothy, this is holy, this is sacred, what are you doing?
Yeah. I remember that now. It was because we could see them, and it was like all these crows start pouring in, and they're like circling the hollow. And then we had this realization that in ways that we didn't anticipate, Timmy's life is feeding this whole community. Like, it's not just us and the people who have signed up to help us on the day and to purchase meat. Like, the ravens and the crows were a very clear indicator that Timmy was going to be a part of this entire hillside. Because then what the crows do is they'll find a stockpile, which the intestines of the cow, and they'll take it and they'll hide it different places around. And then other animals might find it and eat it. So you might get squirrels going in and eating it, because squirrels will eat anything. Squirrels are terrifying. Don't let them tell you that they're vegetarian. Squirrels are metal. So the squirrels will go and eat things. And it was really, we could watch as the crows took pieces away to hide them. We could like watch Timmy expanding to fill the whole hollow. Yeah, I forgot about that.
That stuck with me.
Wow.
That stuck with me when I was outside, parked in the parking lot, looking at a lake that was filled with geese and goslings and the edge of a forest. And I just needed to get a couple things done in my car, and it was so beautiful. And I'm just, it's so beautiful, and the geese and the goslings and the water. And then this fox comes running out, and just the geese are like frantic because they're trying to guard the babies but also get away. And he just darts in, darts out, and a very limp, loose, floppy gosling in his jaw. And he ran off into the woods. And I was like, some days you're the fox, some days you're the gosling. And it helped so much to remember that story. But then also watch the geese, because the grief part is real.
Yeah.
They were so upset. They started calling. Geese from the far side of the pond came over. You could hear them telling each other what happened at whatever level they communicate. And then they surrounded the remaining goslings and drove them into the pond. And they just hung out there for another 20 minutes while everybody kind of processed what had happened. Such a profound thing to realize. We don't think of ourselves as playing both roles. But in the story, when you attach back to all life is given to be given away, there starts to become such a responsibility. And I remember you gifted us with 2 pounds of ground Timothy. It was the best chili I have ever made in my life, with the same recipe. You remember that?
Brian's like,
And I'm sure, on a spiritual level that had an impact. And I'm sure the fact that there were no stress hormones in Timothy as he died so peacefully, that's healthier for my body as well, and makes me question all the other red meat that we consume and how that's done. And it was part of our decision. Now we only eat buffalo or meat that we know is harvested exactly, which is rare to know exactly how your meat is harvested. But they also field harvest, drop one at a time. There's no disturbance in the herd.
Nice.
It's an amazing offering. And to choose life at that level is a huge responsibility.
Absolutely. So we also talk about how it's easier for the cows because they're just doing their normal day, totally chilling out. And then there's like a weird moment. But it's so much harder for us because we, instead of getting it shrink wrapped in plastic and ignoring all of everything that is difficult about the process up to that point, human labor, not getting paid. We were talking about children working in meatpacking plants, like all these things. Like we're just ignoring all that. Stockyards, everything.
Stockyards and the transportation anxiety.
All of it. But we take on, by being present and by giving attention, the responsibility and the grief ourselves.
And letting our hearts break. I mean, you talked about photos of you holding Chino in the hay when he was holdable. A tiny little guy. Tiny meaning 80 pounds.
Right.
And the fact that he will be next year's Timothy.
This year, 2 months and a half, 2 months.
And that the pigs that I saw in the forest are in the freezer now. You have to stop and be grateful when you know. And eating meat proportionally to all the other things and seasonally. And it's amazing how it kind of happens to you when you're close enough. And
the other part of that, a lot of people, when we tell them we do our own harvest of meat animals, they're like, oh, well, you can't name them. Like, no, we name everyone. We absolutely name everyone. We're not here for hands off. Like, we're here to have our hands on our life, and to deal with the joy that brings and the pain that comes with. And so, I feel like I can understand in a physical sense some of the realities around how my existence has a negative impact on others and a positive one, but because I am choosing to name the animals and know them by name, so that when I harvest them, my heart can break and my heart can heal, and it just makes it real. I'm not here to not make it real. There's that book by Jeremy Taylor, Holy Living, Holy Dying. It's like a 2-book thing that gets packaged as one. And spoiler alert, like, the Holy Living book is just about dying. It's like the whole thing. His whole thing is like every day is your death is present, and it's a preparation for and a dialogue with.
Is the holy dying all about living?
Yeah. Yeah.
My teacher will say, we're all just sitting here melting like candles.
Cool.
And in a very short time, very,
cool.
very short time, none of us will be here.
Yeah.
So what does it mean to be here now?
Mm-hmm. Oh,
And it's weird how we cycle back to these infusions of joy. Thank you for the deep heart work. Thank you for attempting to condense a very big life into a very short amount of time. I would love to turn to this rapid wrap-up set of questions.
Okay, sounds good.
What most prepared you for your current work? And this can be totally top of mind.
Probably running through the woods, mostly feral, between the ages of 5 years old and 15 years old.
I love it. The druid thing seems inevitable.
Yeah.
What do you dream for yourself in the world? This can be a Miss America answer or a,
I'll just do my little wave here. I would dream actually for rest, for the ability to deeply and truly rest, because to truly rest with each other, we need to, I've learned this from the horses, we need to trust each other. We need to show up without an agenda. And I think there also requires a sort of seeing each other deeply and truly that can help us lower defenses and approach with curiosity. So I think deep rest would be a beautiful thing.
If someone wanted to know more about what we talked about today, what Google terms should they search?
Definitely regenerative farming, eco-theology, mostly because I'd be really curious what came up with it. Also, I think indigenous knowledge, and because our farm is in a particular place in a particular time, I would also encourage folks to search for the Abenaki and to learn more about Indakina, which is the land that our farm is on.
Very cool. What's your favorite food?
Potatoes.
We already knew that. What's your favorite animal?
That's a really tough one. I have always loved kestrels. They're the tiniest. Are they a true falcon? Anyway, in that kind of category. They can hover in the air.
Like a hummingbird hover?
Yeah, well, it has to be windy. They kind of use a wind crutch. They're small and they're ferocious and they're beautiful, and there's something about them that I feel like if I could be any non-human animal, I would want to be like that because of the way they show up. I'm really captivated by them.
That's fascinating. What's your favorite holiday?
Michaelmas, because horseback parade through the graveyard. It just kind of checks
all
all my
symbology.
boxes. Yeah. It's like
one and done. What's your favorite way to celebrate?
Lots of people in the house, lots of food. So that's probably pretty obvious. And probably there would be a wood stove or a campfire involved. That to me feels like true celebration.
Love that. How do you take care of yourself so you can keep going?
I think there are levels to this one. With the farming, I'm selling the work of my body and the work of the land, which feels really presumptuous. So I'm a bath person. I will take like an Epsom salt and lavender bath most nights in the winter. That's just a like total spirit body reset, soak the muscles, make it good. And, connecting with friends who are both local. I have a Dungeons and Dragons group that meets almost twice a month online. They're all clergy.
Very cool. Okay, last question. What on or about your farm brings you the most joy or delight?
It's like an internal feeling of walking outside in the morning, that first step outside where the air is kind of crisp and the sun is usually playing on the hillside. We have this like mountain view next to us that's close in. It's not like a big mountain view, it's close, and you can watch the sun just move down it. And then to hear all the animals start to respond. So the chickens are yelling. My goats now, which are just completely mental, are all screaming at me. The 2 new female goats we got are like the most mental creatures. Like, I don't know what is up with them, but they are yelling all the time. And they're just so happy first thing in the morning.
It's interesting that ultimately everything that we've talked about, the land and the food and all the energy of growing, comes from that sun. So it makes sense that there's a little bit of a party, I guess.
Yeah, I like that.
Rachel, it's been such a joy to have this conversation publicly and to bring together so many things we've talked about privately.
This has been such a joy for me too, and such a privilege. Thank you, Karen.
Thank you so much. Women, Land, and Food is a Sister Camp production. Our producers are Elizabeth Brightly and Christina Samuelewski. Our studio engineer is John Toda, and we recorded at his studio, Syntax in Motion, and at Star Farm Studio, both in Burlington, Vermont. Our audio engineer is Bridger Dunnigan. Our lead for ads, sponsors, and partnerships is Georgie Rubens. Our 2025 summer intern is Marin Warshay, and our research assistant is Phoebe Woodall. Our music composer is Mike Coulter, who shared variations on his original piece called Seeing from his Confidence Head studio in Santa Monica, California. Land is our middle name, and our journey together follows our connection to land through food that grounds us and sources our lives. We take seriously that our Vermont stories are lived on the unceded tribal home of the Abenaki people. Our home on this edge of Lake Champlain is known to be an ancient place of gathering and exchange that was stewarded for thousands of years by generations of Abenaki before our European ancestors broke their connection to their lives on this land. We are working to understand the results of this oppression that we have inherited and to participate in all we can restore. We encourage you, too, on your journey to discover and restore your own varied and complex connections to your land and heritage.